Do you really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a great film, explore its themes, its history, the filmmaking, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Roca. I'm a host and co-host of numerous shows here in Los Angeles, also an actor and voiceover actor.
And today we're doing a movie where, honestly, John, I feel a little bad for you on this one because I'm not sure that I'm going to shut up. You might not get a word in edgewise.
Wow.
This is one of my favorites. And not only is it one of my favorite films, I think it's one of the best crafted films I know. And I use it in class to teach all the time. And the movie is Die Hard, 1988, John McTiernan, starring Bruce Willis. It is the archetypal action film.
Let me stop you right there. There's no way you're not letting me get a word in edgewise. This is also one of my favorite films, bar none, immensely rewatchable, still holds up today in 2016. And yes, set the bar for every action thriller to come out since. Like when we talked about When Harry Met Sally, set the bar for romantic comedies. This sets the bar for action films, or everything gets compared to Die Hard. Always since 1988.
There's no question about it. And this is, I think I said this when we talked about Raiders.
Yeah.
This, to me, goes into that category of one of the great films that ruined Hollywood.
Ooh,
you know, because this is one of the movies that creates the action genre that we see in the 90s leading up to today with superhero movies of bigger and bigger and more spectacle and drives out smaller films, drives out dramas, drives out other kinds of movies with these huge tent poles. And it's really sad, but that doesn't mean this wasn't a great film. It is absolutely a great film. And it's a movie that maybe sometimes they miss the details that are the subtleties of what makes it a great film, and they imitate the big explosions and the huge action set pieces.
That's a very good point. You're right. The story of this film, the story within the film itself is fantastic. It's a great connective tissue between the audience and the film. The idea of this guy coming in, going through a possible divorce, definitely a separation. His wife hasn't taken his name, or his wife is like taking her maiden name.
Seems like dumped his name. Like had his name and then got rid of it.
Right.
Yeah.
He's going to some Christmas party. Who knows how that's going to go? The kids are being taken care of by their maid. You know, there is all this stuff going on, and then you have all this political intrigue come out of nowhere. Possible terrorist. What's the reason? That gets flipped. The script gets flipped on that. There is so much about the story itself that would already make this a fantastic film. When you add the incredible action sequences, the timing of them, it just takes this film to a whole nother level. And immediately when you think of the word classic, I don't think of Die Hard. But when you proposed it, I was like, of course that qualifies.
Absolutely.
On so many levels.
So, John, how did you first come to this film?
Oh, yeah. Die Hard. I came to it just like, I think just anybody else who was alive in 1988 and it was of age. I went to go see it with a bunch of friends. I think at the Tackett's Mill Theater back in Woodbridge, Virginia, or maybe the Potomac Mills Theater. I guess it had opened by then, the AMC there. And I was absolutely just lost in love with the film. Went back, I think, 6 or 7 more times to see it. Because back then I had a thing about going to see movies over and over and over again because I just loved the experience of being in the theater and seeing it. And Bruce Willis was a guy I had enjoyed because of Moonlighting. I had been a fan of Moonlighting. And so he had done, I think he'd done like Blind Date or a couple, another forgettable film. And then he was in this, and this one just launched him in the stratosphere. And he was so, it was the moment with where he talks about his wife with Reginald VelJohnson, who's playing.
Unbelievable scene.
That's the moment that to me I was like, that's an actor. Whatever you want to say, that's an actor. And those moments are so rare in action movies. The honest connective tissue of a relationship being spoken about in a very real, vulnerable way that you would have never seen in a Schwarzenegger film, you'd have never seen in a Stallone film, and that's why, again, it elevates and transcends the genre. And I loved it, seeing it, and I've been a fan ever since, every time it's on.
So we're going to have to get back to him talking to Al from the bathroom.
That's right, Al.
But I have to tell you my story, how I saw this movie, because it's one of my all-time favorites.
Okay.
So, summer of 1988, I'm working at a summer camp in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Nice.
And totally, we're off the grid. There isn't even a grid then. I don't know what's going on in the world. And every couple of weeks, we would have a half day off. So I decide on my half day, you know what? I'm just going to drive down to Sonora, which is like 40 miles down the mountain. Yeah. And I'm going to go see a movie. Now, I don't know what movies are in the theater. I know nothing because I've been in the mountains.
Right.
So I drive down, I'm looking at the tiny multiplex in Sonora, and I see this movie, and I go, oh, it's got that guy I like from Moonlighting because I love Moonlighting.
Yeah.
Walk into a movie theater, I haven't seen a trailer, I haven't seen a
What?
poster, I don't know anything about what this movie is, and I walk into a completely empty theater.
What?
I am the only person at this 11 a.m. or whatever showing, and I sit down, and the movie is Die Hard.
Yeah.
That's how I saw Die Hard.
Wow.
No idea what I was getting into, and it was one of the great, that might be my greatest movie-going experience ever because it was so just unexpected.
Yes.
You know, because I would have seen anything. Whatever bad movie, I would have been happy.
Right.
But to see this movie was unbelievable.
Oh, those are the best, man.
And we should say, by the way, if you haven't seen Die Hard, what the fuck is wrong with you?
This is maybe
I don't understand.
Maybe I don't want to go that far, but certainly get on it if you're a young movie viewer
If
and
you're
you
a
haven't
movie
seen
buff
it,
and you haven't seen Die Hard.
Yeah,
Come
or
on.
you're one of these guys who like is resistant to what everybody tells you to do. Trust me, this is one of those instances where everybody is right. This movie is fantastic. Rent it, watch it all the way through, enjoy it, see it on Netflix, whatever it's available on, and enjoy the hell out of that film.
Yeah. And of course, we are going to spoil everything in the movie.
Absolutely
So,
so.
really, you have no excuse for not watching this film.
Hey, gotta work. You got any Christmas music? This is Christmas music.
It was December 24th on Hollis Avenue, the dark, when I seen a man chilling with his dog in the park. I approached him very slowly with my heart full of fear. Looked at his dog, oh my God, a ill reindeer. But then I was dealing with the man at a
Well, you hit on exactly one of the points I wanted to make, which is when you, in terms of screenwriting, when you're writing a film and you're going to have your characters come into a huge action sequence,
Yeah.
they get a huge problem, they have to deal with something. You're going to have your first 5, 10, 15 minutes of the movie before you get there.
Yes.
And you, as a screenwriter, must make the movie that the characters are in before the action sequence shows up as interesting and compelling and dramatic as if there wasn't an action movie.
Right.
So that if, for some reason, Hans Gruber went to a different building and we're just left in the movie of John Mcclane and Holly Gennaro and their relationship, we're in.
Yeah.
That we're so involved in their story.
Right.
And it is really dramatic. And this is one of the key things to Die Hard and why, and we'll get to this I'm sure later, why the sequels don't ever work as well.
I agree.
Is that John Mcclane is an ordinary guy. That's the key.
Yep.
Is that he is one of us. And of course, he's exceptional in all these ways.
Yeah.
But emotionally, he isn't a superhero. He's not. This movie comes out at a time when the big action movies are Arnold Schwarzenegger and
Yeah,
Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
And he's not them.
Yeah,
He's not Rambo. He's
Right.
not the Terminator. He is a guy that we can relate to. And establishing in the very first shot of the movie is white knuckling the plane
Yes.
in the passenger seat.
Yes.
The first thing we see is this guy is scared.
Yeah.
And so what this movie is doing is humanizing this person from the first shot.
Right.
And then you get this great weird moment of this guy saying, you know what you got to do?
After you get where you're going, take off your shoes and your socks. Then you walk around on the rug barefoot and make fists with your toes.
Now, it's the weirdest thing
Right.
you've ever heard. And not only does it humanize our main character, and it's funny, and it's kind of interesting, but it sets up this huge piece of the story,
Yeah.
which is that we're going to make our character barefoot.
Yeah, and the payoff of it is brilliant because Bruce Willis has a great moment where he goes,
Son of a bitch. Fists with your toes.
he's a relatable everyman. He's a regular blue collar dude doing his job, flying out to the East Coast, flying out to the West Coast, unsettled by having to enter into this whole new world. You imagine that he's a no nonsense New York cop, like he's just a guy who's been working the New York beat for a long time. He's going out here to try to kind of connect or reconnect with his upwardly mobile business wife, and this is interesting for the 1980s to have this kind of thing where the woman seems to be making more money than the man. It's all these things that are going on through the movie that make it timeless, make it like transcendent in terms of a genre, and I think that's what's so good about the story. The story is what hooks you in. The action sequences are the frosting on top of the cake, but the cake is the story, man.
Well, and I think, whenever you have cake, I do want frosting.
That's right.
But if you just gave me a puddle puddle of frosting with some flour underneath it, I would be like, this is not so good.
That's a Van Damme film.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And you bring up the name thing again. It's so what we would term this in filmmaking is plants and payoffs. So we're going to have a plant, which means we're going to give you a piece of information that he's going to be barefoot, or that she's only using her maiden name,
right?
And then we're going to pay it off later, which means it's going to become important later in the story.
Yeah.
And a bad plant is where some character says, like I remember in Lost World, the Jurassic Park sequel, at the very beginning you see this character be a gymnast, the girl, and you're watching, you're like, oh, that's going to come up,
of course,
and you could see the movie telling you, hey, look at this. That's not a good plant. A good plant is where it's emotionally part of a story. So when he walks up and he has to check into the lobby of the place and he uses the computer touchscreen and he goes to look for Holly Mcclane, can't find Holly Mcclane, he shrugs, oh, crap. So he goes to look under G, finds Holly Gennaro, and goes, now we're in a great character moment where like his relationship with his wife, which we're really involved in, and this is a betrayal of sorts.
Right.
Then we get the great fight where his goal, his objective is, I'm going to make up with my wife. I want to spend my night with her tonight.
Yeah.
That is definitely what he wants. And she asks, there's this lovely moment where first she says,
why don't we make it easy? I have a spare bedroom. I mean, it's not huge or anything, but kids would love to have you at the house.
They would have.
I would too.
Yeah.
And there's this moment of connection. There's this moment of, it's going to be okay. And then what does John McClane do? He says, didn't miss my name, though, did you?
Yeah, because he's a dude.
And he can't not say it.
Yeah.
And then they have this fight, which is obviously a fight they had before. And then she storms out unresolved because she has to go make a speech. And what does John McClane do? He bangs his head on the wall and says,
That's great, John. Good job. Very mature.
Right.
Yeah. So first of all, we have an unresolved relationship, which is what you want because we're going to resolve, because our goal as writers and as filmmakers is not to resolve things. Our goal is to create tension.
Not in the first act.
Not in the first act. So we're creating tension here. But the other thing, so we put all this story into Holly Gennaro. Holly Gennaro becomes a key plot point because the reason that Hans does not know that that's his wife is because of the use of the maiden name. Right. So that's a good plant and payoff. Another one is that she's pissed at him, so she puts the photograph down.
Yes.
Why does she put the photograph down? It's totally motivatable. She's pissed at him. But the photograph being down continues to allow Hans not to know who John McClane's wife is. These are plants and payoffs. And the ones that work perfectly.
The subtle plants are my favorite. The subtle plants that you catch later or they come at you and you're like, oh, yeah. Those are the best. Those are the best moments in film when you're like, oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. They made that work. Those are the best. And you're right, Steve. There's so many in the film that so absolutely work and are earned and are completely believable and not overly expository that like make you feel like, oh, I've been manipulated. Like you don't feel manipulated. You think it's inventive and smart and believable and natural organically in the course of the story. And that's important.
I want to say something about this word manipulated because it's one I've thought about a lot, which is people often come out of a movie and go, ugh, it was so manipulative. And that's a negative.
Okay.
And I think they don't mean what they think they mean.
Okay.
Because the whole point of movies are manipulative.
Yeah, manipulate your emotions.
That's why we're here.
Right, exactly.
That's the reason you came to the movie was to feel emotions. The job of the director and the actors and the filmmakers is to manipulate your emotions. And what you're actually saying when you say it was so manipulative is that movie failed to manipulate me. That's what you're saying. You're saying, I see you trying to manipulate me and it's not working.
Right.
When you're being truly manipulative, you have no idea and you're just weeping in a puddle in the corner. That movie is being successfully manipulative.
Or you're fist bumping after an action sequence.
Or fist bumping after an action sequence. Or laughing hysterically in a comedy.
Absolutely.
All of those are examples of being manipulative. Absolutely. All right, so let's back up a little bit and talk about some of our filmmakers. So first of all, we have our producer, Joel Silver. This guy does one of the best lists of movies. Unbelievable.
And keeps coming back every time.
Keeps coming, still doing it.
Still doing it.
Yeah, from he was an associate producer on 48 Hours to Die Hard, obviously, the Lethal Weapon movies, the Matrix movies, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I mean, that's a great list of films. Predator, which is where he starts working with John McTiernan.
Right.
And I know you love Predator, and so do I. And Predator is a great B movie.
It is a great B movie, and I'm glad that you agree.
I said that just for you.
People misunderstand my argument about Predator because I say it's a great B movie. It doesn't mean it doesn't have quality. It doesn't mean it wasn't a good movie. It is a fantastic movie. It's so much fun to watch, and it is Schwarzenegger just on the cusp of superstardom, really coming into his own. But the premise is a B movie premise.
In the classic Hollywood sense. Like,
Yes.
this is not...
It's sci-fi.
It's sci-fi, yeah.
Yeah.
This is when in Hollywood originally had A, B, and C movies.
Right.
And they put the A movies were the big dramas. They were Gone with the Wind and Bridge on the River Kwai. And the B movies were action, Western, crime.
Yes.
C movies were sci-fi. I mean, and
Touch
horror.
Of, you mentioned Touch of Evil. I was listening to our Touch of Evil episode the other day, and you say Touch of Evil is a B movie. It is
Right.
a B noir.
Well, because back in the day, they had A movie theaters,
Yeah.
B movie theaters, and C movie theaters. And A movie theaters was Radio City. You know,
Right.
that's where you would have the big premiere and the big movies would play.
Right.
And B movie theaters, you would have the double features, and C movie theaters would be out in the hood.
Right.
You know?
Plan 9 from Outer Space and
Yeah,
stuff.
and that's what would play there. Anyway, but
John McTiernan.
Predator, you see the beginnings of what's John McTiernan's style, the
Yes.
way he moves the camera around, and his love of supporting characters and little moments.
Right.
Characters that in other movies would be throwaway, and I think you see this to the nth degree in Die Hard. He gives them a little something that makes it special,
Yeah.
and it elevates, and I think Predator is the movie that actually makes Schwarzenegger a star.
Yeah.
More so, I mean, Conan, there's nobody else who could play Conan.
Right.
And Terminator is a very specific thing, but then he goes and makes Commando and Raw Deal.
Right.
It's Predator is a genuinely good movie.
Yes.
And that's what makes him a star, I think.
Right, an action star, but what makes him mainstream is Twins and Kindergarten Cop.
Sure.
Those are the ones that blow him up. But yes, as an action star, he comes out with rivaling Stallone. And what you say is a great point. Willis is counter-programming. Willis is
Right.
counter-programming. You know, he comes in, and at that time, it's an everyman. Keanu Reeves picks up that mantle a couple of years later, or a few years later with Speed, an everyman guy who does the stuff that you don't, because he's
Right.
skinny, he's not that strong, he's not muscular, he's got muscles, but he's not muscular. So you start to feel that although we enjoy the fantastical nature of Stallone and Schwarzenegger, we intrinsically connect with an everyman because we all feel like we're in over our heads a majority of the time of our
Right.
lives. You know?
Well, and what's a more heroic story? Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting 50 bad guys.
Right.
Or John McClane.
Yes.
You know, and because John McClane feels like me. Of course, I can't do what John McClane
Right,
does.
right.
But still, there's that sense of he's got marital problems. He's not the most suave of guys.
no.
But he is a guy who literally dies hard. He is not going to quit.
That's right. And he's street smart.
And he's
Which
he's
is
very
important.
smart.
Yeah.
Well, and intelligence, that's something I wanted to talk about too. Yes, we're going to see this movie to see action sequences and guns and explosions. But what makes the movie so thrilling is he's really smart.
Yes.
And you watch, for instance, he puts the now I have a machine gun ho 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 guy into the elevator, and then he knows how to open up that elevator, climbs on top of the elevator, is watching down at the elevator through the roof to see the reactions, and when they start saying names, he's writing down the names.
Yes.
And you go, oh, this guy's smart. This guy's really thinking about how to do it.
Right.
So we've had Bruce Willis, who's been barefoot, and he has been running from the bad guys,
Right.
and we get to, because he's barefoot and Hans knows that he's barefoot, we get to the shoot the glass scene. He's
Yes.
in this room that's surrounded by glass. They explode all the glass in this cacophony, this overwhelming sound field of shattering glass.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis is cowering really in a corner, kind of. And one of the great things about Bruce Willis throughout this film is he's scared, and stressed out, and so you're feeling for him constantly, and he realizes he's going to have to run across this glass, and that's the only way he's going to get out. Cut to a few scenes later, and he's on the radio with Al. Al is the cop who's down below, who's the good guy that's talking to him.
Right.
And they have a conversation. And Bruce Willis is literally picking shards of glass out of his bare feet.
Right.
It's really, and there's blood everywhere, and it's really brutal. And we're not talking about that.
No.
Instead, the first conversation is about why is Al a desk jockey?
You got flat feet?
What the hell you talking about, man?
Something had to get you off the street.
What's the matter? You don't think jockeying papers across a desk is a noble effort for a cop?
No.
I had an accident.
The way you drive, I can see why. What'd you do? Run over your captain's foot with a car.
I shot a kid. He was 13 years old. Oh, it was dark. I couldn't see him. He had a ray gun, looked real enough. You know, when you're a rookie, they can teach you everything about being a cop except how to live with a mistake. Anyway, I just couldn't bring myself to draw my gun on anybody again.
Sorry, man.
Hey, man, how could you know?
I feel like shit anyway.
And it is so painful because what's actually going on in the movie is that John McClane is probably going to be killed by terrorists.
Yes.
And he's wounded and he's sore and he's scared, and that's not what we're talking about. And in this moment that Al has to reveal this thing, you watch John McClane's character and Bruce Willis' performance so good.
Yeah.
React to the fact that he made this other guy relive this painful memory.
Right.
And he feels terrible. I mean, the guy's literally got glass in his feet and is probably going to die.
Yeah.
And yet he feels terrible for this other policeman's situation.
Right.
It's a really moving scene. And it's a scene that makes you feel for these characters. And that scene, by the way, also is a perfect plant.
Yeah.
Because the plant is, this is a guy who he hasn't drawn his gun since killing the kid.
Absolutely.
And he's going to kill Alexander Godunov at the end of the movie.
Yep.
In a moment that I think has been copied by a whole bunch of movies terribly since then. So then that's the first scene. And then the second scene is, again, we're back in that bathroom, and Bruce Willis is telling Al that he has to find his wife when it's all over because he's probably going to be dead.
Yeah.
And tell her
that that she's the best thing that ever happened to a bum like me. She's heard me say I love you 1,000 times. She never heard me say I'm sorry. And I want you to tell her that, Al. I want you to tell her that John said that he was sorry. Okay? You got that, man?
Yeah, I got it, John. But you can tell her that yourself. You just watch your ass and you'll make it out of there, you hear me?
And again, Bruce's performance,
Right.
is so moving. And you go, oh, he's in this moment, in this darkest moment of his life, he's not thinking about himself.
Yeah.
He's thinking about how he could have been a better husband and the woman he loves.
Yeah. And this is what's great about this moment, too, Steve, is that it's this rarity in action films, but it is a relatable moment between two guys. Between two guys of a certain age.
In a very sensitive moment.
Yeah, in a very sensitive moment, who've lived a life, and they're connecting like almost over a beer about these very powerful moments in their lives.
Yeah.
And it is what solidifies them. They're two cops talking shop, but they're two cops talking about their lives as well. And that's what connects them and makes us enjoy their relationship through the film, because they don't see each other till the end of the film.
Yeah. And when they do see each other, the emotion.
Yeah.
Because you go, well, these guys are brothers.
Yeah.
From this moment forward.
Absolutely.
They have a connection and it is never going to go away.
Right.
They went from 0 to 100% in one night.
Yeah.
One interesting thing about the script that I learned is that originally it took place over 3 days.
Whoa.
And McTiernan said, no, this is one night.
Yeah,
Which
has to be.
Has to be. I mean,
Right?
this is another interesting one, by the way, and we're going to get to this movie fairly soon, I think,
Yeah.
is if you read the book Jaws, in Jaws,
Yeah.
they get on the boat, they go out and hunt the shark,
Right.
and they come back that night and have dinner and do some stuff, and they go out the next day, and they come back and forth and back and forth. And Spielberg said, once they're out, they don't come back.
Yeah.
And that's a brilliant directorial choice.
Yeah. Well, and I want to give a shout out real quick here, Stephen. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun. To the actors in the film.
Absolutely.
And
I was going to get to that next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, people love Bruce Willis, obviously, and people love the late Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber. And, of course, Bonnie Bedelia is fantastic as Holly Gennaro. But you got to give shouts out to Alexander Godunov and to Reginald Vell Johnson. There is no way there's no way the film works without Godunov's character, who was becoming a fantastic actor before he died of AIDS, unfortunately. He had done The Money Pit. He was building a resume.
Witness.
Witness. He was building a resume as a ballerina, a Russian ballerina who was turning into a very powerful actor. And then you had Reginald Vell Johnson. Who knew what Reginald Vell Johnson was? There is no way Bruce Willis's performance works without Reginald Vell Johnson as the guy playing off of him and in those scenes, because he's so believable. Once again, as an everyman, he's overweight. He's buying those Twinkies he knows he shouldn't buy. He's in those moments, but that's a dude that we know. That's a dude and he's got a warmth to him.
Yeah, he has a sick, because when the guy
humanizes
gives him shit about buying the Twinkies,
Right.
he laughs about it.
Yeah, of course
he
he
goes,
does.
yeah, okay, you know.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't get angry. He's this, you like him just from the very first moment.
Yeah, he's a good man.
And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Alan Rickman, but while we're talking about actors, you can go down the whole list.
Oh, yeah.
Bonnie Bedelia, who's great,
Yes.
who Bruce Willis actually brought her in.
Oh, nice.
That was his idea.
Okay.
But then you get Paul Gleason.
Yes.
This movie has two of the great assholes of all time.
That's right.
Because you have Paul Gleason, who's one of the great jerks, who's in Trading Places, he's in Breakfast Club, and he is just a perfect guy to dislike.
Yeah.
And you have William Atherton, who we talked about in Ghostbusters, and that he is just horrible. And that one of the interesting things about this film is that there are the people that you like and the people that you don't like.
Right.
And the terrorists are among the people you like.
Which is ironic.
Yeah. That on the people you like side, there is Bruce Willis and Bonnie Bedelia and Mr. Takagi and Al. And then we also have Hans and Carl and some of the terrorists, because we actually love watching them.
Yeah.
And then the people we don't like, you have Deputy Chief, whatever, Paul Gleason.
Dwayne
Robbins?
Dwayne Robbins.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like
doesn't matter. And then you have William Atherton, who's the asshole reporter.
Right.
And you have the FBI guys.
Johnson and Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, Agent Johnson, and the other Agent Johnson.
It's so brilliant.
Which is hilarious.
And those guys have played assholes before in separate films.
Yeah,
Robert Davi.
And I don't know the other guy's name. And yet we just hate these people.
How ironic, right?
Yeah. And one of the things that McTiernan decided when he went on the movie, and I'm not certain about this, but I got the sense originally they were just terrorists.
Yeah.
This is based on a book, but I don't think it resembles the book very much at this point. I've never read the book. And that what he said is there's no joy in terrorists.
Yeah.
Is that he wants the movie to be fun. And as soon as you get into terrorists, you get into heavy stuff, which is why they're thieves. It's because we can enjoy watching them be thieves. We like watching Theo break into the safe. We like all this stuff. That's really fun. If they were terrorists, it wouldn't be fun.
Right, and they're making fun of other terrorists. Like that one scene where Hans goes, Asian Dawn, my brother is Asian Dawn. And the guy goes, Asian Dawn. It's something I read about in Time magazine. Yeah, it's just, they're making fun of the whole thing because they're just thieves, which is why when the swerve happens, it makes you like them even more because there is a purity in what they're doing. Yeah. Not Johnson and Johnson, not Dwayne. It's all about appearances. It's all about trying to be cocky. There's a reality to what the terrorists, quote unquote terrorists / thieves are doing that is pure. Like they're like, we just want the money. That's it. And we want to get it.
Well, and there's the line from Bonnie Bedelia where she says,
after all your posturing, all your little speeches, you're nothing but a common thief.
I am an exceptional thief, Mrs. Mcclane, and since I'm moving up to kidnapping, you should be more polite.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And the other thing he did was he made them German. And part of the reason to make them German is if they had been Middle Eastern terrorists, then we have emotions about that. And that's now we're into politics. Whereas German terrorists are fairly neutral. Like we don't have a strong set of feelings about that. And so because he wanted to avoid politics. And he wanted to give us joy. Right. And you really enjoy watching them do things.
Well, it helps that he casts Alan Rickman, too, who's naturally a fantastic actor, to step into that part, and you immediately gravitate to him because he has a talent and an energy that you cannot resist.
He is, and this is, I think, his first film. And he was seen by the casting director, saw him in a play in London, and I think he's Royal Shakespeare, and just went, you got to bring in this guy. And he, to have your first film be among the, I'm sure if you were to do a top 10 movie villains of all time.
Absolutely. He's top 5 at least.
Yeah, I put him in the top 5, maybe top 3. Yeah. His performance is so fascinating and so fun and so smart and so unexpected and scary and dangerous when he wants to be. Like his way of killing Mr. Takagi, I'm going to count to 3. Yeah.
It's a very nice suit, Mr. Takagi. To be ashamed to ruin it. I'm going to count to 3. There will not be a 4. Give me the code. 1, 2, 3.
I don't know it, I'm telling you. Get on the jet to Tokyo and ask the chairman. I'm telling you, you're just gonna have to kill me.
Okay.
Is so callous. And he's doing so many different things. It's a fascinating portrayal.
Yeah. And what he takes with it is it's believable. He plays the believable nature of this X factor that he did not count on. Like, he did not count on this. He's an incredibly smart guy. He thought this whole thing through. He knew exactly the reaction time of the police. He knew all this stuff that was going to happen. He predicted when the FBI guys were going to show up. He had planned this thing to a T. He knew exactly what he was going to do. And then here comes John McClane. Yeah. And the progression with which the frustration that grows within him is very organic and believable. And that scene when he finds Bruce Willis up on the roof or wherever it is, and he tries to be William Clay and have that interaction with him. That is two masters going at it, which is fun to watch until one figures out the other one, right? Because it's a battle of wills, of intelligence, you know?
Well, this is the thing I was going to say, is that we like watching intelligence. Is that these are not dumb people. Nope. When you watch the terrorists roll in, they have a plan. Yes. And they're executing that plan. And it is fun to watch them execute the plan. Yeah. And this is why I think, and I think we said this before, is that we don't like characters in film based on their moral position. Right. We like good people. We don't like bad people. Right. We like characters in film because they're interesting. Yes. And and sometimes because they're intelligent. And Alan Rickman is a perfect example. He's a very bad person. Yes. And we love watching him. Yeah. Adore watching him. Right. And the other thing that Alan Rickman, or that McTiernan does, and you see this in Predator, you see this in Die Hard, obviously, and you see it in Hunt for Red October, is even the tiniest parts, he gives them something interesting. Yes. So Theo is a great example. He's a great character. So good. The way he talks about, the way he's watching for the SWAT teams when they're coming up.
Listen up, guys. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring except the four assholes coming in the rear in standard 2x2 cover formation.
And then the whole thing when they're attacking the cops, it's like, oh, the police have themselves an RV.
And what's so great about that sequence is you have you're first of all, it's beautifully put together. You have the terrorists who you like and are being really cool, and Theo in particular, wiping out the cops who you don't like. But then those guys are suffering and they're hitting the tank again and the guys are screaming and you feel really bad. You do. And then you're with Bruce Willis who's watching all that, who's filled with rage. And you even have things like the rocket falling off of the cart and them having to go back and get it. And all those little details are what's making this action sequence work. The time, because the rocket fell off the cart, that's what gives Bruce Willis the time to drop the bomb on him. And then that climaxes with this huge explosion. At that time, I think this is the biggest explosion I had ever seen on film.
Probably.
I mean, it just was so dramatic. And again, I go, this is this thing that we've seen explosions get bigger, much bigger since then, obviously. But we haven't seen them do all the pieces to build up the tension of the scene that the explosion releases.
Yeah. And what's so fantastic about that sequence, when you break it down, it is the moment that, for me personally, Hans Gruber becomes fully evil.
Oh yeah, like I think what I would put it slightly differently. I agree with you in terms of the moment. There's a change there. Right. I mean he's evil from the beginning. Okay. But we really like him.
Yes. Well,
and we're having fun with him.
I
think we're enjoying him, and that's the moment where it's like, oh, we got to kill that guy.
Yeah.
You know,
he's got to go.
Yeah, we got to take that guy out. I can't wait till John McClane takes that guy out. Or even the tiny moment where you have Al Leong, and Al Leong is one of these tiny character actors of the '80s who you see everywhere. He's the Asian guy with long hair and a mustache, and he's in Big Trouble in Little China. He's in Lethal Weapon. He plays Genghis Khan in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. That's right. And so when as a fan of martial arts films, like once we saw him, it was like, that's Al Leong. We found out his name. Anyway, he's there. He's getting his gun ready to shoot the SWAT guys, and he looks down and sees a Nestle's Crunch in the thing and grabs it and eats it. Now, you don't have to have that in the movie.
You don't have to have that in a movie, but it's so important.
Yeah, but that's what makes it's the little details that makes movies good. And this is why when Hollywood goes to imitate the big explosions, this is what they miss. Is that it's the big explosions, but they're built on tons and tons of little tiny moments.
Humanization.
Yeah, I had a theater teacher who was crazy and obnoxious, but said two brilliant things to me that I've always thought about. And this is talking about plays, and one of them was that people think that directing a good play is having one really great idea. Right. And no, he said the number he gave was it's 10,000 good ideas or 10,000 great ideas. Wow. And I think with film it's even more. Yeah. And you see in this movie constant little tiny details that are like, that's great, that's great, that's great.
Even the scene where Goodenough comes down and takes the butt of the rifle and destroys the bar table.
God, that man looks really pissed.
He's still alive. What? Only John can drive somebody that crazy.
Right, and it's once again, it's a window into their relationship, but also it's a window into her affection for him.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what's so great about the film with their relationship. You can tell at every moment that she does have affection for him, even though she's mad at him. He obviously has affection for her. We get his private moments because he's our protagonist. So
Right.
Holly's moments have to come in the natural course of being kidnapped in that situation. And those are the moments that she has him.
And you know, with the subjects of sexism and damsels in distress and all that has come up, Holly Gennaro's a great character.
She's a great
She
character.
is tough
Handles her
and
own
strong.
business. Mhm.
She handles when she has to walk in and say, there's this great moment of,
I have a request.
What idiot put you in charge?
You did. When you murdered my boss.
and you see Alan Rickman go, I got to give you some respect.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You're a worthy adversary.
Yeah. And that's great. Yeah. She is a completely well-respected character as opposed to Ellis. He's the one I forgot when I was mentioning all the people we hate.
Ellis is great.
Oh, he's a great. So this is the coked up, sexual harassing asshole who gets himself killed.
Yeah.
And the scene where he gets killed is very difficult because he has done one cool thing, which he didn't out Holly.
Yeah.
He lied about why John McClane was there, protecting Holly. That's kind of cool. But then he's also selling John out, and he also is such an idiot and doesn't know that he's about to die. And the moment of realization, and you're watching and going, shit, he's going to die. He's going to die. And he doesn't know. It's such a painful scene.
And kudos to hair and makeup because throughout that whole scene, his hair is up and he's like, he's got the bravado of a cocky idiot guy on coke that doesn't understand the depth of the situation that he's in. And when he comes to the realization he's about to die, the hair is down, he's sweaty, he looks primed for death because he's messed the situation up.
And one interesting thing, again, just on a technical level, is so when you shoot, if you're shooting a conversation between two people, you want to have them in general looking like they're looking at each other. So you would have one person in their shot, they're on the left side of the screen and they're looking towards the right side of the screen. The other character would be in the right side of the screen looking towards the left side of the screen. Now, when you do a phone call conversation or a radio conversation, you want to obey those same conventions. So this is a hint for directors out there, is that you want to create the illusion that they're talking to each other, even though they're facing totally different directions. They could be 1,000 miles away from each other, is that you want to feel as you cut between them that you're cutting between two characters that are looking at each other.
Yeah.
So if you watch that scene, when I don't remember which is right and which is left, but when it starts, I think it's Alan Rickman is on left looking right, and Bruce Willis, when he's talking to Alan Rickman, is on right looking left. Then Alan Rickman hands the radio to Ellis.
Yeah.
And now Ellis is right looking left, which is the direction Bruce Willis was looking. Bruce Willis takes a walk and turns around, so he ends up looking left to right so that they still look like they're having a conversation with each other.
Yeah.
Now and of course, you don't shoot these scenes at the same time. You might shoot them weeks or a month apart. And so you have to make sure that you still create the illusion, and they had to do a whole walk and camera move so that it could still look like Bruce Willis is looking at Ellis, even though they're in different rooms. That's good craftsmanship on filmmaking. Another thing, the way McTiernan uses the camera at this time is fairly radical. With this came up when we talked about Touch of Evil, which is that it's relatively easy to cut from static shot to static shot. So I have a master shot that's static and two singles, close-ups of people as they're talking to each other. I can cut back and forth. As soon as you start moving the camera around, they're not always natural places to cut.
Yeah.
It gets harder. And so, but McTiernan felt he'd come up with schemes where he really composed the dance of the camera. And if you watch, the camera is moving a lot in this movie. First editor he had, he says, and I don't know who this was a very experienced, like award-winning editor, couldn't handle it.
Wow.
And he had to fire him and bring in a new editor and explain this, what was apparently a fairly radical editing scheme to cut between all these camera moves that are constantly happening. And it looks beautiful. You never notice them.
No.
I mean, not that you don't notice the camera moves, but it's so smooth. You never have those jump cuts that mess you up. Yeah.
Well, and it's so enjoyable for the viewer because you're constantly moving with the action. Like that's the thing that's so great about his work as a director. He's one of these directors that just faded after a while, which is it's just such a shame. But that what happens with these directors sometimes because Hunt for Red October, Predator, and Die Hard are three of the best films you could possibly have on your resume.
Yeah.
And to see that it didn't create further and further action, that where he's doing a Bond film now or something where he could still rely on.
He did other movies that are like, okay.
Yeah, they're okay, but they never capture the magic.
He seems a little crazy, by the way, having listened to interviews with him.
Maybe that's what happened.
I don't know. I mean, because, man, Die Hard is off the charts great.
Right.
I love Hunt for Red October.
Yeah.
The other one I wanted to talk about is music.
Oh, yeah.
This will be a little bit of film school,
Okay.
but we don't talk a lot about film score. And we talked about a little bit in terms of John Williams, and
Yes.
the things we talked about there was the idea of the leitmotif, which is a theme that goes with a certain character. An element I want to talk about here is the idea of musical resolution. So, so basically, music works on certain principles that rhythm and melody and harmony have states in which they resolve, which means that you create tension and then the tension resolves itself.
Right.
And it's built into musical structure. So if you listen to a symphony, the symphony has tension within it. And it gives you the expectation of a resolution, but doesn't give you the resolution until it wants to, and then you have a release.
Yeah.
So, and there's also harmonies. They're chords that make you feel really good and warm and pleasant, and then they're chords that are sad or lonely or scary. And so a good film composer is playing with these ideas of resolution in order to create both tension and the expectation of resolution later. And then when you get the resolution, here it is.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things in this movie is that the villains are scored with a classical piece of music. They are scored with Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which has the section which was known as Ode to Joy. And the way Beethoven's Ninth Symphony works is you're continually hearing little pieces of Ode to Joy, but he doesn't give them to you. So you hear, in a very dissonant, non-harmonious, sort of dark way, you'll hear dun, 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 but then it stops.
Wow.
And if you watch the arrival of the villains, throughout the film, you are hearing these dissonant little pieces of Ode to Joy.
We're in.
Okay.
There is a string quartet that's playing at the party.
Yeah.
And they're playing all sorts of classical music. When Hans is coming up the elevator and we come first to the party and they enter, what piece of music are they playing? They're playing Ode to Joy.
Wow.
When Hans is in the elevator with Takagi and he's humming, what is he humming? Humming Ode to Joy. So throughout this film, you are hearing little teases of this unbelievably joyful piece of music.
Yeah.
And you're hearing them in dissonant ways and incomplete ways. So the audience, just like when you're watching a symphony, is being primed with the tension created by not hearing the true melody.
Right.
So you're waiting. You don't know this is what you're waiting for, but you are emotionally and musically waiting to hear Ode to Joy. And when do we finally hear the triumphant moment of Ode to Joy?
Al, talk to me. What's going on here?
Ask the FBI. They got the universal terrorist playbook and they're running it step by step.
When they open the safe.
Yes.
It's gonna go. It's gonna go!
And the wind is blowing. I don't know where the wind is coming through. Wind is blowing through Hans's hair. And you have this beautiful, joyous, triumphant moment of Ode to Joy.
Yeah.
And who is the most triumphant moment in the movie given to? The bad guys.
Merry Christmas.
Right.
And that's where it goes back to, we like these guys. And it is so happy when they get into that safe and get those bonds and they're looking at the statues. It's an amazing, amazing moment.
Well, and it does take you into that. And it's a great piece of what we just mentioned, a bunch of minutes ago. The idea of manipulation. It's effective manipulation, so that when that moment happens, it's the explosion of ecstasy, and it's a revelation, right? Because the lights are up and everyone's opening, and the close up of McTiernan moves close up into them, so that you feel the power as well. You're caught up in the music as well, the swell of it all, which is so fun to experience as an audience. And you're right, it's subconscious. It's completely subconscious, operating with you underneath, so that when the moment happens, you have it legitimate, for lack of a better word, joy watching it happen.
You do. There's no question that it is joyful.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the idea McTiernan had of this is why they're thieves and not terrorists.
Yes.
Is that we want to have fun.
Yep.
And by the way, getting back to the idea of being manipulative, if you were watching and went, Ode to Joy, I get it, then you were being poorly manipulated.
Yes,
what makes it manipulative is that you're not aware that this is happening to you.
Yeah.
One of the other interesting things that they do so well in this movie, and it's really important, I think, for an action movie, is geography.
Yeah.
Is the movie lays out this building. Is that okay, this is we're on the 31st floor, and this is the floor that's still under construction, and this is the poster of the girl in the elevator shaft,
right?
And this is, and you get to know all of these places, and they become really important. And he spends some time making sure that you understand kind of where things are.
Yeah.
And each of the designer, whose name I just drew a blank on, is a great designer. And he, one of the interesting things, so Joel Silver, I didn't know this until just recently researching the film.
Yeah.
Joel Silver loved Frank Lloyd Wright.
Oh.
Frank Lloyd Wright, great architect.
Yes.
And I can't believe I never noticed this until I just found out about it. The interior where the party is, and there's the waterfall off the rock, that's Falling Water. Falling Water is Frank Lloyd Wright's most famous house, built in Pennsylvania. You can go find pictures of it. And it's literally built on a rock on a river. So there's a river going through this house, which is a terrible place to live, by the way. Apparently it's always wet and moldy and cold.
What a shock.
but it's a beautiful, and what they did when they designed this where the party is they built Falling Water as where the party is.
Wow.
And so that's Frank Lloyd Wright. Upstairs where Takagi's offices is all Japanese, and that they have all these different spaces that are really carefully designed to be recognizable.
Right. But that's another payoff too, and just to be in a smaller way, the whole idea of it's a Japanese company. That's why she has to use her maiden name. Like, if she's not going to claim marriage, then she can't be divorced, right? That looks bad. So she has to use her maiden name so that no questions are asked, right? It's all these kinds of things, these little things that they do. And you got to give a shout out to the screenwriters, don't we? I mean,
Stephen D'Souza and I think it's Jeb Stewart is his actual name.
Jeb Stewart.
And I was like, who named their kid after Jeb Stewart?
Hey, man, you know, we all got things.
Okay.
Yeah, and Roderick Thorpe wrote the book called Nothing Lasts Forever, which is a great title, by the way.
It is. It sounds like a Bond title.
Double meaning within the title itself. Well, the other thing, dude, I want to talk about, if we can get to the action sequences, which we haven't touched on yet.
There's some action sequences in this movie.
Am I rushing?
No, go for it.
What happens on the roof, these are the things that to me sell the movie. The story, like I said, is the cake, but the frosting is really, really well made. It's homemade.
Oh, yeah.
It is done so well, the frosting being the action sequences. The stuff on the roof, the inventiveness of using the fire hose wrapped around himself, and the fear that Mcclane has that this is not going to work. He's just like,
if I get out of this, I will never get up on a big movie, a tall building again.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then when he goes through, this is what's so great. And this is like, as a wrestling fan, and this is a weird allusion to make or connection to make, you know that no matter how close you are to getting out of trouble, there's always that one extra thing that you still have to go through in these, when you watch these matches. And the same thing happens here in these action sequences. Bruce Willis goes through the window, the glass, you think he survives, and all of a sudden the steel of the fire hose starts to drag him out the window. So the whole effort he had made just to get through the window.
I want to back up more than that, because first he jumps off the building, which is crazy,
which is in a great shot of the fire blowing up behind him.
He's hanging outside of a glass thing, and he has to, and again, it's intelligence.
Yes.
As he pushes himself off the building, grabs his gun, fires to break the glass, crashes through the glass. You're like, holy shit, that's great.
Right.
And then, as you say, then the metal ring for the fire hose falls, and it barely gets out of that.
Right.
And then the next one is the helicopter goes crashing by, and there's huge explosions. He has to dive in the water. So it continues.
Yeah.
The idea of continuing action sequences.
It never ends. And even when he sends the C4 down the elevator shaft, he has to explode. He has to escape his own fireball that he's just created in the elevator shaft by running away from the opening that he's thrown the chair of C4 down, and is trying to escape that as well. Yeah.
Well, because he's an ordinary guy. Like you picture it in so many movies where like the guy is walking away from the explosion, like he throws the lighter back over his shoulder, and the explosion goes off, and he slow motion walks away as if it's the coolest thing in the world. Not Bruce Willis in Die Hard. He goes, oh shit, and dives away because he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
Right. But also what's brilliant about the film, Steve, is in those action sequences, they don't what's the word I want to say? I guess for lack of a better sentence structure, they don't not have the 80s quip lines.
Oh, sure.
Like when the Italian guy, hey, pal, when he's shooting him above the conference table, and then Bruce Willis shoots him and goes, thanks for the tip, or whatever he says. Yeah. And those two, he has this, or when Bruce Willis throws the dead guy onto Reginald VelJohnson's
welcome to the party, pal.
Yeah, welcome to the party, pal. There's still the quotable lines. And this film is one of the most immensely quotable lines. Of course, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, being the number one most quotable line of the movie, which comes back through the series, unfortunately, a number of times. But throughout the movie, you have these great lines that keep you connected to Bruce Willis as an everyman, but also as a guy who's using comedy to deal with the stress of the situation.
Well, the difference, I think, because I totally agree, they're totally great quotable lines.
Yes.
The difference, I think, between an Arnold quotable line or a James Bond quotable line is that when you're watching, and I think this is what happens in the later movies, is you're watching Arnold and you're going, okay, what's going to be the line? Every time he kills someone, what's the thing going to be? And it's like he drops someone off of a cliff. What happened to him? I let him go. You know, it's like you're going to get these things. With John McClane.
Best Schwarzenegger impression I've ever heard.
Oh, right. Terrible. With John McClane, I'm not paid for my impression.
That's true. That's true.
With John McClane, they come out of character.
Yes.
Is that it's not that he's trying to come up with it's not that the movie needs him to have a good line.
Right.
It's that he's having Hans brings up the idea of cowboys, and that becomes a thing.
Yes.
And then to say fuck you to Hans, he says yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Right.
Like that's where it's coming from. Like it's coming out of his character. He's in the ducting.
Yeah.
Come out to the coast. We'll get together. Have a few laughs.
I mean,
but who hasn't been in that situation where they're like, why am I at this party?
Who hasn't been inside a duct?
Well, I mean, like
people shooting at him.
Right, but who hasn't been in a situation where like, I never should have said yes. I never should have come. Damn it, I knew I shouldn't have come, but I came anyway, and look at the situation I'm in now. Not obviously a duct tape and terrorist, but it could even be at a dinner or at a party or what have you. It's a relatable moment, man. And throughout the whole film, it is peppered with relatable moments that we as human beings naturally gravitate to. Even the evil people like Atherton, that hungry desire to be the most successful guy, to get that story, to get the scoop at all expenses. He's a dirty son of a bitch, but he's doing what he needs to do to succeed and survive in that business. You know what I'm saying?
Well, because, and again, it goes back to this idea that McTiernan makes sure that all the characters we meet are fully formed.
Right.
They are full people.
Yes.
And even though they're on screen for only a small moment, they have a whole story that makes sense. One of the things, as an actor, you should believe that this is your movie.
Yeah.
That if you're delivering that, you're the waiter who's delivering the cup of coffee, then this is part of your whole story, and that you're the most important character. You shouldn't steal the scene, but you should have a character.
Yeah, and that reminds me of that line in Shakespeare in Love where the guy who plays, obviously, in Downton Abbey, who plays the butler, he says that the play's about a maid, and because he's playing the maid in Romeo and Juliet. The play is about the maid dealing with this whole situation.
I mean, you shouldn't be stealing focus from Bruce Willis.
Right.
But you should have a fully formed character. And good actors who are good people should allow the actors they're working with the room to do that.
Absolutely.
Whether or not all actors or movie stars are always that generous, might be up for debate. But
Right. Well, he was still young enough in the process before he became whatever he became, according to Kevin Smith. Bruce Willis became.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Those are tough stories to listen to.
Really tough.
Because at this point,
because at this moment, it's like he's in Moonlighting, where he was like amazing, and this is the launch of a star career. And you see this movie, you're like, oh my god, he's the greatest guy ever.
Yep.
And it's hard to. It's a little sad for me because Bruce Willis's career, there are a few really good movies.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a lot of
yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, he had problems with Sybil Shepherd on the set of Moonlighting, and that was probably two people with very strong egos clashing all the time. So you bring that to but he is a man. He is a dude. He is a man. People gravitate to him. I think Blue State, Red State is irrelevant when it comes to Bruce Willis. People just like Bruce Willis.
Well, and it's really this character.
Yes.
Like
John
this,
McClane, yes.
And this is, maybe this is getting a little ahead of ourselves, but talking about the sequels, and I like 3.
Sure.
And that's kind of it for me.
None of them are rewatchable for me. None of them. Only Die Hard is.
And maybe it's impossible to duplicate. It's Bruce Willis's ordinariness, his humanness, his sensitivity, it's all of the tension and the fear that he's going through in the course of this movie that makes that character so great.
Right.
And the more the movies go on, and particularly in the fifth one,
in
the fifth one, he's like climbing up and jumping off of buildings like it's no problem. It's like, dude, you're afraid of heights.
Right.
Like this is established in the first scene in the movie.
And you're almost 60 years old. I hate to break it to you. Because what would have made that last movie work better is if he has to negotiate Moscow like he negotiated the Nakatomi Towers.
Right.
Like people forget when you watch the movie, that's the first time he's ever been in that building.
Right.
He has to figure that building out, where everything is going, using the blueprints, figuring out where what would go where, his own wiles as a cop, figuring all that out. If he had negotiated Moscow the way he negotiated Nakatomi Towers, that film 5 might have had a chance of being good.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing, is that it's watching the intelligence and watching the humanness and watching him overcome adversity.
Yes.
You know, it's like Die Hard's like Rocky in that sense.
Yes, absolutely,
Is
Steve.
that the thing about Rocky is he doesn't go down.
No.
Rocky is a film about courage.
Right.
And Die Hard is too.
Right.
Whereas when you become Arnold, essentially, when you become a superhero, well, then there is no courage because it's like, well, you can do anything. You're not afraid of anything. You're not really human anymore, and I can't relate to you anymore.
Yeah.
And it's always sad to me, and we've seen this with other films, when someone who is there at the inception of something great doesn't understand what made the thing great when they're trying to replicate it later. Right. It's like, don't you know, you of all people should understand, but actually a lot of time they don't.
Yeah. And it drives me nuts when film fans try to convince you. Like Matt Nost on the Top 10 show, he tries to convince me all the time that Die Hard 2 is a good film, and I do not agree.
I thought it was good when I saw it in '91 or whatever year it came out.
It's a clone.
It's a clone,
in a jar of formaldehyde. It is not actually a good film. And Die Hard 3, it's serviceable.
Three's the one that I kind of go, okay,
sure, but to me, it doesn't have the magic of 1. There's something about a guy against all odds in that situation, going through a divorce or going through a separation, trying to save himself and his wife. There's a nobility in that, and so that when it happens, and it happens in a way that it would stretch the boundaries of reality, but it works. The tape on a sweaty bloody back.
Oh, such a good scene.
That stays there, and then he swings it around. It's so believable. And once again, this is great, Steve, because we should talk about the finale. There's the plant of the watch on
the Rolex.
The Rolex on
another perfect plant in chaos.
Right? On Gruber's wrist, being the thing that is keeping him alive and possibly dragging them both to their death, Holly and Mcclane.
Yeah, on Bonnie Bedelia's wrist.
Right, on Bonnie Bedelia's. Oh, sorry, on Bonnie Bedelia's wrist. Right, which is the Rolex watch that what's his face gave her.
Well, Takagi gave it. It was a reward for the last deal.
Exactly,
it's a Rolex.
Right,
and we also have to talk about the look on Rickman's face, hanging off, about to do a fall, which I think he did do a fairly high fall.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't the high fall that you see in the wide shot.
Oh, they didn't tell him.
Right. And they dropped him.
Yes.
He's up over an airbag. And I don't know how high the fall was.
Yeah.
But the look on his face.
It's so
first of all, the shot to begin with of they're trying to get the watch off. He's in super slow motion, and the barrel of the gun comes into frame.
That's so
you're
brilliant.
like, oh shit! And then the fall and the expression on his face in the fall is. It's an amazing moment.
Yeah, and they don't miss that moment to make a comedic moment out of it with Paul Gleason going like, I hope that's not one of our guys.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant, those little things that pepper the film throughout and make it so much fun.
One thing that's just silly and personal, but I bet you had this exact same experience. When I moved to Los Angeles, that's Nakatomi Plaza.
Yep.
I mean, when you saw it, like, because it's in Century City.
Yep.
And every time I drive by it, and I've lived in LA for 20 years now.
Yeah.
Every time I think that's Nakatomi Plaza.
One of my favorite Christmas memes from the last couple of years is the picture of Nakatomi Plaza, and it says "Never forget" or "Always remember" or something like this. It says "Never forget," and then has the date of Die Hard coming out.
So that building is it's right next to the Fox lot.
Yeah.
Owned by Fox, and they had to. It's just one of the weird things of filmmaking.
Yeah.
They had to do serious negotiations in order to use the building.
Wow.
Yeah. Fox charged Die Hard, a movie made by Fox, a ton of money to use that building. Like when they really did roll that tank up and wreck that railing, they really did that. And it was like, they said it's like a month of negotiation to be able to drive a truck up, because they did mess up the building a bit.
Well, this is a great, you just made a reference to something in the film. Like there's an interesting subversiveness in the film to that, right? Every organized police force is made fun of. The SWAT team cuts their hands on rose thorns, right? And it's like, oh, these are really tough guys that are complaining about cuts on their hands from a thorn bush or something. And then and you have Dwayne and you have Johnson & Johnson, or just idiot FBI agents that get blown up. And then you have
Idiots
Paul Gleason.
And fairly evil.
Yes, exactly. And then Paul Gleason coming in as Dwayne, who's all about like saving face and the public eye and being cocky about all this kind of jazz, not really assessing the situation correctly. What you have are the grunts on the ground, who the regular blue collar dudes. It's their way of making fun of these arrogant, the management, the higher ups, that kind of thing. It's all there. You know?
Well, that's what I mean is that there's these people that you like and there's the people you don't like.
Yeah.
And the people that you don't like are split between good guys and bad guys.
Yes.
And the people that you like are split between good guys and bad guys. And that it's interesting that Hans and Carl are two of the people you like.
Yeah.
They're fun to watch. One of the interesting things you have to think about, again, it's a filmmaking thing when you're making a movie like this, is continuity.
Yes.
And continuity means, does the thing in this shot look like it's supposed to look at this moment in the film? So if I have someone pick up their cigarette with their left hand, and the next shot they can't have it in their right hand. And that the job of continuity is the script supervisor, but it's also the job, that's mostly in the scene, as you're going shot to shot, one of the big jobs is costumes.
Yeah.
So for instance, one thing you'll do when you start to shoot a movie, you're working with your costume designer, and they will make a chart of the days of the movie. So if you have a movie that takes place over 12 years, they'll say, okay, what day is this? This is this day, and they'll have the clothes for that day. Well, this is all one day. But you have Bruce Willis wearing a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Classic, tank top, wife beater.
Wife beater shirt, yeah.
And that shirt's got to get dirty.
Yeah.
And dirt continuity is super hard. Exactly how dirty is this shirt at this moment? And you're shooting a whole film out of order.
Right.
And you're going, oh, at this point, he's got a little blood on the shirt from the first thing and a little dirt from the second thing, but he hasn't gone through the ducting yet, so it's not filthy. And now he's got blood from this thing. Or wound continuity. That's a really hard one too.
Yeah.
What did that bruise look like? How much time has passed since he got shot in that shoulder?
Right.
And that takes a team of people really focusing on this. And they get it mostly right. There's actually a moment where I think other people said this too, where that shirt looks too dirty at that moment, and then less dirty, and then dirty again.
Right.
They didn't quite get it right. But it's really hard to do.
I think one of the great mess ups of that particular thing is in Wrath of Khan, the blood-stroked open lapel of Kirk's after Scotty's nephew has grabbed his lapel and put blood streaks on it. The blood streaks vary in degrees depending on the shot.
When are we doing Wrath of Khan again?
Hopefully soon, and hopefully we'll get Scott Mance on the show to do it with us. We will see.
I cannot wait. A little preview, hopefully, of things to come.
Yes. What else would you like to address, Maestro?
I'm looking down my list.
I remember someone telling me that I wouldn't get a word in edgewise. Tell me what you would like to talk about.
Don't test me. So, character development.
Yes.
One basic idea. So, if you're a screenwriter and you're thinking about how do I approach creating an interesting character, one philosophy or one technique is what's called a character crack. And a character crack is this is who the person is, and this is their crack. The crack is generally something that is a negative trait in opposition of who they are or what they want. Right. So a really simple one that's done perfectly is Al is a policeman who can't draw his gun.
Yes.
So his identity is a cop, a hero, a guy who wants to do the right thing, and the flaw is that he can't draw his gun. And then in the course of the movie, we resolve that flaw.
Yes, we do.
That is a perfect, again, plant and payoff and character crack and character resolution. Again, with John Mcclane, he is this person who loves his wife and cannot continually is his own enemy in resolving his situation with his wife. So the crack is his pride. The crack is his inability to communicate. And in the end, the moment is so touching where he says,
Al is my wife, Holly Gennaro.
Holly Mcclane.
Hello, Holly.
This is why good plants and payoffs work so well, is you built up so much emotion around this name, and he has come to the place where he goes, I have to love her for who she is. He's changed that much.
Yeah.
And then she has looked at her husband who's done this ridiculous thing. And that's my husband, you know, and it's a wonderful moment in the film.
And take his name again, because he showed that he could, this is the level to which he loves her, to endure all this to make sure she's safe and to save her from this guy. Who knows what this guy was going to do, if he was going to dump her eventually, kill her and dump her somewhere. And he did everything he could just to get back to her. It's his penance for the mistakes he's made in the marriage, I think, in a kind of roundabout way, which I think works, because when that moment happens, it's very beautiful. And Al knows that relationship just from that conversation and allows a smile of understanding in that moment, which is so great. And then you juxtapose it with immediately, just when we feel calm. Once again, just when we feel comfortable, there is one extra thing that needs to be done, and that's good enough. Throwing off the robe or throwing off the whatever they've got him on.
It's like a blanket, yeah.
And then pointing the weapon, which somehow I don't know how he walked out of there with a weapon on the blanket, pointing the weapon at
Goodenough, who we last saw hanging from a chain.
Yeah, hanging from, which is a great fight scene.
Fantastic fight scene.
Holy crap!
Yeah, I want to talk about that. And not only is it a great fight scene, and it's brutal.
Yes,
it is hard and brutal. And you got this guy who's a fantastic ballet dancer who's doing some beautiful kicks.
Yeah.
And then you have like the way Bruce Willis fights is like berserker angry.
Yeah,
like it's not Bruce Lee skilled. It's not powerful.
It's
Arnold.
regular dude fighting.
It's a regular dude, and he just and I love the line. I can still remember seeing this in a movie theater. I'm gonna kill you, and then I'm gonna fucking cook you, and then I'm gonna fucking eat you. That is just
that's the level to which you're pushed sometimes.
That is full insanity, and it is so. And you're in the. I remember I was alone in a movie theater, and I went,
right, because you're caught up,
because you're so emotionally involved in that.
Yeah.
And the final Goodenough moment, I really think this is one of those moments that's just. It's sad because it's imitated so much.
Yeah.
It's so great and it's so awesome. And now, because now you watch an action movie and the action movie ends and you go, okay, when's it coming?
Yeah.
Like, oh, we didn't see that guy. That guy's coming, but that guy's going to come back.
Yeah.
And it's sad because we kind of know the moves.
Well, now, but the three best ones were in the 80s. Because this one, Lethal Weapon with Gary Busey, and then Glenn Close coming out of the bath in Fatal Attraction. Those three were perfectly done in the 80s and have been often imitated, as you just stated, throughout the decades since.
Right. And you kind of want to just. I remember watching in Die Hard 3. There's sort of like it's what sometimes they have what I call the fourth act. So a movie tends to have a 3-act structure, and then you have, and I think this starts with like Aliens. Where Aliens, you have that big final sequence. You think things are done, and no, it's not done, and we're going to have a big final sequence.
Right.
They do one in Die Hard 3 that I think is terrible, and now you see them a lot.
Yeah.
You think it's over, no, we got to do another big action sequence.
Right.
Final thoughts on Die Hard.
My heart, for the first time in any of the films we've reviewed, my heart is breaking talking about it. Final thoughts, knowing we're done talking about the film. My final thoughts is this is one of my most favorite, absolutely fun films I go back to all the time. I think it's incredibly timeless. If you haven't watched it in a long time, watch it again. Appreciate it after our listening to this episode and see if the things that we talked about give you an even deeper appreciation and enjoyment of the film, because that's what the film is above everything else. It is one of the most enjoyable films that you will ever spend your time watching.
I totally agree, and I'm going to put this movie. I think I said it. I know I said it about When Harry Met Sally. Maybe one other time. I'm going to put this in the category of perfect movie.
Ooh,
I think this might be a perfect movie.
I think you're absolutely right.
I can't think of a moment, and it's not that the other movies we've talked about are all great.
Right.
They're great films, but this is like a perfect machine to do the thing that it does.
Yeah.
And there's so many. We only scratched the surface, and we haven't talked about Argyle. We haven't talked about there's all these little character moments. We haven't talked about even the fact that Bonnie Bedelia's assistant is pregnant.
Yes.
Adds something to the film.
Right.
We haven't talked about the way Mr. Takagi jokes and tries to make John McClane feel comfortable.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about watching Ellis do cocaine and them walking in on him. There's just all these little moments, little details, and there's so much in terms of the filmmaking. So, watch the movie, enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. You can't beat it. And then for those of you who are filmmakers who really want to analyze film, watch the commentary track. Watch it again. Watch it with the sound off. Try to take a look at the shot composition. Think about each one of the character moments for the minor characters that you introduce, that they're all sort of interesting, and how he made those choices. It's a movie that you continuously can dig into and learn from.
Yeah, I do want to say one last thing because you referenced Argyle. Yeah. Argyle is the reason this film to me is as close to Shakespeare as an action film will ever get, because Argyle is classic comic relief of a Shakespeare tragedy or Shakespeare drama. He is there for those moments to take you to give you a little bit of brevity before we sink back into the drama that you're watching. And he's great at it. That actor is fantastic.
And by the way, one thing we haven't brought up, this is a Christmas movie.
That's right. What a perfect time to set the movie.
Yeah.
Christmas in L.A., no less. So it's not going to be snowy. It's not going to be all these other elements, but you have that vibe of it being Christmas, which is what's so enjoyable about it, so that when he has the tape, which once again has that bit of humor to the situation.
Yeah. The Run DMC. It's Run DMC?
Yeah, Run DMC,
Run DMC
right,
Christmas
exactly.
music. Yeah, it's great.
Hollis and Christmas in Hollis. Yeah.
All right, so that is the beginning of what we think about Die Hard.
That's right.
We probably have more to say, but I feel we should wrap this up. Sure. So we'd like to hear what you think about Die Hard. You can reach us on our Facebook page, which is the Cine-Files. That's CINE-FILES. It's not a PH, because why would you have a PH make an F sound? That's just bizarre.
That's so strange.
You can leave a message for us on Facebook. You can request other films, although I got to tell you, we've gotten a lot of requests, and we're going to have to be doing this. At this point, I think we have to do this show for at least 5 or 6 years to take care of all the requests that people have sent us.
Yes.
But as always, you can reach me on Twitter at @SRMorris. John, where can they reach you?
You can always find me at The Rocha Says, ROCHA, on Twitter and on Instagram. Follow me. I communicate with everybody. I like to respond back if I can respond back, if it's a reasonable request or reasonable question.
Yep. As always, we'd love to have you review us on iTunes. It's a big help. All right. That's it for this week. We will see you next time on the Cine-Files.